She's not what you'd expect. She's tough and feisty, but gentle and tender. She makes millions and gives millions to the poor. She cries, she laughs, she teaches, she comforts. This is the Dani Johnson Show.
Hi, I'm Dani Johnson. Welcome to the Dani Johnson Show. Hey, are you that person that believes that marriage is supposed to be conflict-free? Friend, that was me. Like crazy, right? And you're like, wait a second, isn't it supposed to be conflict-free? I don't know where we ever got that idea from. How in the world did we ever, first of all, did we ever pick up the idea that here we have two opposite people, just like even opposite gender, just like take that one. Now, listen, I know we live in a world where same genders are married to each other. That's not what mine is, so I'm going to talk about mine. If you're okay with that, and then you just apply it to you. But even if you are of that other, even if you are of the same gender, I'm sure there's some differences. Bottom line, let's just like break it down, make it plain. Anytime you put two humans together, there is going to be conflict at some point. There is. But for some reason, me being so ridiculously naive, even though I had grown up in a violently abusive home, for some reason, I had it somewhere in the back of my mind. I had this expectation because Hans and I had lived together for 2.5 years. We had had a child together, and we had never had a fight. We never had any kind of like contention with each other. There was never conflict with each other. There was never an argument with each other. It was just straight up bliss. But all of a sudden, we get married, and whoa, man, we made up for lost time. There were holes in walls. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, it was bad. It was so bad. That first year was horrifying. And then there were times where it got better, and there were times where it was bad. But if I'm really honest with myself, I had an expectation, a presumption, an idea that marriage is always supposed to be like Disneyland without the lines. Because the reality is Disneyland has tons of conflict in it. But do you understand what I'm saying? The fantasy is that there'd never be a fight, that we'd always agree on everything, that everything would always be wonderful. For some reason, I kind of had that in my head. If you were to ask me back then if that's what I believed, I probably would say no. But the reality is all I have to do is look at my actions. So are you that person that believes that same thing without even realizing it? And that every single time you and your spouse come through a conflict or come to a conflict, like kind of, you know what I mean? Kind of like a crossroads, and a decision needs to be made, or an action is taken by one or the other, and there's not necessarily agreement there. Two different people seeing the same exact experience completely differently. Do you realize that's completely human? It's human. Listen, on the Dani Johnson Show, we bring you content that's about your success. And success to us is the full picture. Success is not half the picture, part of the picture. No, it's your whole life. Do you understand? Your entire life. You have like 9 different areas of your life, and marriage, if you're married, is one of them. And when that is not in sync, when that doesn't have harmony in it, when that is not reaching its pinnacle of beauty and pleasure and love and passion and enjoyment and satisfaction and fulfillment, when that's a mess, your business is a mess. Definitely your parenting is a mess. Come on, you and I both have done this, right? You have a spat with your spouse, or in my case, a war with your spouse, and then you have no patience for your kids, right? You just end up just like, they do something silly, and you're like, it's like almost you take it out on I did anyway. I did that one too many times. Like, gosh, I probably need to apologize. I did apologize to my kids for that, actually. Every time I did it, I apologized to my kids for that. I'm an avid, please forgive me. I'm so sorry. I'm working on this. But anyway, bottom line is that I think if you're really real with yourself, that if the conflicts in your house turned up to be blowouts, could it be that you have an expectation of there being no conflict in your relationship? It's kind of immature to think that way if you really are honest with yourself. So I had to like come to grips with this thing called expectations. These expectations that we put on marriage, the expectations we put on our spouse. Check this out. According to Psychology Today, conflict is healthy for relationships because it signals a need to change for both parties. Have you ever been to a counselor? We certainly have. I mean, we would not have survived without counseling, no question. I mean, Hans and I we had messed up backgrounds. If you've been watching this show for the last few weeks, we've been talking a lot about marriage. And so listen to me. Like, our backgrounds both had physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect. Our parents both did drugs. We were both molested. I was molested as a 3-year-old till I was 16. He was molested when he was 12. I was molested by 3 different people. He was molested by 1. So again, you take all of this hurt. Okay, we both had abandonment. I was adopted by a different person and didn't know it till I was almost 18. His mom took him away from the father in the middle of the night, just like left. And so he never knew his dad, didn't meet him, but he remembers meeting him until he was 15. And so listen to me. So we had all of this mess. We had all these hurts. We had all this trauma in our background. And now 2 toxic traumatic people get married. Yeah, that's going to work. Okay. I was 22. He was 18. That's not going to work. Okay. I was already financially solid. He was broke. That's not going to work. Do you understand? There's so many. He grew up in Hawaii. I grew up in California. That's not going to work. I'd already been married. I'd already had a kid. Oh my gosh. There were so many points of conflict. And even though that when we were dating, we didn't have any, but all of a sudden we get married and there's a ton. Like, oh my gosh. And they were wars. They were absolute wars. But I promise you, friend, you can make it through it. The first thing is realizing that conflict is actually healthy. And the reason why I asked you the question, have you ever been to a counselor? Yes, the counselor never takes sides, at least a good one. Doesn't take sides, but it says both of you have to change. Like, what? I hate this counselor. Yeah, and guess what? Guess who your best wise counselor is? Yeah, your Father in heaven. Your Father in heaven is the wisest of all counselors. And guess what his answer would be? The same as I told you a couple weeks ago. The same answer or a week ago, whatever it was. The last time we had this conversation about marriage, which was, you need to change him. He needs to do this and he needs to do that, right? Basically, I want him to be my puppet. Okay, I want him to act the way I think he should act, the way my expectations say he should act, the way that society, especially the church, right? Especially how church says he's supposed to act, at least my perception of it, right? My perception of it, which is what? That he needs to be Jesus Christ of Nazareth? That somehow my husband is never supposed to have a bad day, but I'm okay to have a bad day? In fact, I'm okay to have a bad week during that cycle of the month? Okay, but he's not allowed to have a bad attitude? I can have all the bad attitudes I want, but he's not allowed to? Wow. Think about it, right? I'm allowed to be annoying, but he's not. I'm allowed to be frustrated, but he's not. I'm allowed to have a bad day, but he's not. So really my expectations of Hans, especially when he and I started going to church, was that he was Jesus, that he was supposed to be Jesus 24/7, that he was not supposed to have any human activity inside of his mind, his thoughts, his feelings, or his heart, that he was supposed to be God. Bad expectation. That was an environment I created for him to fail in. Look at my tall measuring stick. Yeah, who am I comparing him to? Or I'm comparing him to the male counselor. We had a couple that counseled us for a while. Sadly, most of that turned into a disaster. In the very beginning, it helped to save our marriage, but as it continued, it about tore us up. But bottom line is like how they presented themselves to be, right? And how we saw his grandparents to be. Like, on the outside, it's like, oh, you're supposed to be like grandpa, and you're not, right? Gosh, look at these crazy expectations. So anytime, here's another one. I've seen couples do this after attending First Steps to Success. Sadly, they didn't get the message of personal responsibility. They didn't get the message of what has to change in me, not what has to change in my spouse. But I've seen people that when they've discovered something like GEMS, which is understanding personalities, and it's understanding how somebody thinks, how they act, how they walk, how they talk, what motivates them, what makes them tick, their everyday life, how they actually live. Like, for example, a sapphire, who generally is messy, and they're also spontaneous, and they're super fun, and they love to talk, and they love to process, and like to create. And then that opposite personality, who is an emerald, and that person is like orderly, routine, scheduled, timely, right? Okay, and hates change. But then you got the sapphire who loves change. Like they're in a prison in a schedule, but the emerald is in a prison if there is no schedule. Okay, so here you have these opposite people. You're like, Dani, you just described me and my spouse. Exactly. But look, you didn't get married to change each other. And God made the two of you perfectly the way He wanted to make you, perfectly the way He rejoices over you, perfectly the way that He loves to watch you. Yes, weaknesses and strengths, flaws and good characteristics. He made us with all of it. And look, and He's gracious with maturing us. He's gracious, He's compassionate, He's slow to anger, He's rich in mercy. He's gracious and compassionate, man. Right? And look, you should pick that up. And you were late. And then you're too stringent. And it's your way or the highway. This is usually how it goes, right? Right? So rather than trying to change each other, rather than trying to force your beliefs, your ideas, your way of living on the other person. And rather than that person trying to force it on you, because all that does is create not conflict, but contention. That creates contention. Conflict is healthy. It's biblical. Contention is evil, according to the Bible. Striving with each other is evil, according to the Bible. So when we went to a counselor, and I remember the first time them saying, okay, well, the both of you need to change. I'm like, but you don't know what he does. And then that's usually when you want to stop going to counseling. A good counselor is going to make you take personal responsibility, because that's what the chief of all counselors will do. That if you want freedom from the contention, that's when conflict has gone to the next level. That there is no resolution, and the conflict happens in dishonor. How do you know if you have conflict versus contention? Contention is bathed in resentment, bitterness, anger, and frustration. Conflict is bathed in honor. Conflict is, okay, here's the problem. Let me understand your perspective. I want to understand fully. I really want to be able to hear. So if you be patient with me, I want to hear and I want to understand, so I can see it from your point of view. And then if you're okay, I would love to share my perspective. In fact, sometimes when you go to hear the other person's perspective, sometimes you don't even need to say yours, because you got the clearer picture. You got a bigger picture. Have you ever noticed that, 2 or 3 people can watch a movie and perceive it completely different? Or 3 or 4 kids could grow up in the same exact home with the same exact parents and have completely different perspectives about their childhood and how they were raised. This happens all the time. Why? Because God gave all of us a different way of perceiving things. It's according to our own experiences, our personalities, what He highlights, what we're attracted to, what we actually bend our ear towards, what we are interested in even, and what we're not interested in. And that's simply by the makeup. Again, listen to me, that He made us. So learn to cherish the differences in your mate you did before you got married. Learn to cherish that, embrace that. And I believe that they are there to help you see a different side. And so conflict is the opportunity to grow intimacy. Yeah. Conflict creates intimacy. If we have our egos in the right place, we'll have a more intimate relationship with each other, because conflict creates the opportunity for us to share our feelings, to share our opinions, instead of staying on the surface of things, rather than just keeping all the conversations safe. You see, sometimes if you have no conflict, it's a good chance that there is an underlying contention, but you stay away from anything that could tip the apple cart. And so all the conversation is not intimate. Oh, how's the weather today? How was work today? Yeah, oh, really? Yeah, my work was good today too. That's like the surface. That's the surface reporting of the facts about the day. But when we can get into the place of going through a conflict and openly trusting each other enough to share your feelings, knowing that maybe my feelings could get attacked. But listen, My feelings are my feelings. Your feelings are your feelings. Don't put your feelings on anyone else. Don't say to your spouse, you made me feel like. No, no one can make you feel anything. Your feelings are your own. Your spouse's feelings are his or her own. So those feelings, own them. Let them own their feelings. Don't take their feelings on as your feelings. They own theirs, you own yours. But when you can share feelings, opinions, ideas, dreams, trust, this creates a beautiful, intimate relationship that then leads to other really beautifully blessed things that happen between you and your spouse. So, I don't know if this helped you or not, but if you've had conflict and you've been able to work it out, please type it in right now, okay? If you're with us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, just start talking to me. I love to hear your perspective. In fact, to be honest with you, I've learned so much from you personally. I've learned so much from reading what you write. And if I'm learning from what you're writing, other people are also learning from what you're writing. They are. They're clearly learning from what you're writing. You have a voice, you have feelings, and they matter. And they especially matter to us. So please write in the comments right now. We want to know what you're walking through, how you've resolved conflict, or maybe you're just in that place like, I'm going crazy. Okay, and if this helped, we want to hear about it. And by the way, you probably should share this. It might be a good idea. You might have like a coworker, you might have a loved one, you might have a long lost friend from high school that you haven't talked to in years, but you're friends on Facebook with. If you just share this, you might save a marriage. Somebody might see this and go, ooh, yeah, something needs to change in me. I need to stop attacking my spouse. I need to not be that person that is contentious. Conflict is healthy. And by the way, I need to be the person that's not afraid of conflict, but use the conflict as a beautiful opportunity to create intimacy, deeper intimacy with you and your spouse. So share it. Somebody needs to see this. Even if you thought you didn't need to, somebody else does. You can text it to somebody. You can text the link. You can share it on Facebook. You can share it from YouTube. You can share it from our website, DaniJohnson.com. All right, so that's it for us. I pray that you have an amazing day and that today is a day that you choose to use what it is that you heard. God bless you, and we'll talk to you soon.